Yes. The next three are more or less identical, they just come in different sizes. Now, these are the termite, the mole, and the hellbore. Now, we saw how slow Leviathan super heavy transport was. These things are a lot faster. These things are essentially boarding torpedoes that have been modified to literally drill through the ground, erupt behind enemy lines, and disgorge a whole bunch of troops. And these drills themselves are also armed with things such as las cannons and heavy bolters so they can lay down suppressing fire when they breach the surface. In fact, these have actually been used by Imperial forces as well. I mean, the termites, for example, had the entire first company of the Imperial Fist were deployed using termites at one point. So you can just imagine how terrifying this is, just having all these massive drills erupt behind your line, a whole bunch of heavily armored warriors are being disgorged, attacking you while suppressing fire from mass cannons and heavy bolters from these drills themselves is, you know, shooting the crap out of you.
Now, I found supposed speed specs of these things when they're moving underground, but I'm assuming those speed specs are under ideal conditions. Defect with these weapons are if you run into, say, an iron deposit or any hard metal deposit, you're going to slow to a halt and possibly even break the drill. So you have to be very careful where you're driving. I imagine they have ground penetrating radar or ground penetrating sonar as kind of the guiding system. Because obviously they're not going to be able to see where they're driving, and they're going to be entirely reliant on that sensor system. An EMP of any sort is going to knock out those sensors, and they're going to be entirely blind. However, that much said, if your opponent does not have ground penetrating radar of some sort, these are what I would refer to as the entirely stealthy land submarine of doom.
We're all getting in the yellow submarine of doom.
The termite is probably the best way to avoid your armored personnel carrier being a bullet magnet. Because no one's going to be able to see it's there until it comes up breaching the ground. Fortifications become impractical because it's just going to breach up behind the fortification unless you literally reinforce concrete the entirety of the bottom of your fortress. This thing can just come up anywhere behind your lines and say surprise. As far as an open war battlefield, I mean, this is the kind of deep strike weapon that you should truly be afraid of. The Marine drop pod you can shoot down on its way in, or at least knock it off course. This thing you don't even know it's coming till the ground starts vibrating and one of them just surfaces next to you.
To be honest, I can only really think of one racer's weapon that actually has a chance of even knocking these things out. Initially, and that would be the Eldar's vibro cannon, just purely because it sends vibrations through the ground to use as a destructive weapon. And if something like that hits one of these, the termite or mole or hellbore drills, that's probably the only thing I can think of, at least, that can actually, disrupt them enough to actually, send them off course.
That type of weapon would be the bane of their existence. Tyrannid Hive Fleet tendrils already dug into the ground would be the absolute bane of these things' existence, because they couldn't see that they were about to run into one of them, and then it just grabs them and rips it open and starts eating the troops inside. Tyrannid Rippers, absolutely bane of this thing's existence, because the Rippers can actually see where they're going. But other than that, against normal conventional armies, this is probably one of the more devastating weapons that we've seen. And
not to mention as well, the drill is just going to completely eviscerate anyone who's near the point of entry, or the breaching point rather.
And open fire with a las cannon and a pair of heavy bolters, because that appears to be the standard armament. And on top of that, then it's going to launch out 10 troops. The problem I see is the drill obviously is going to be under pressure in order to keep the dirt around it from crushing it as it drives through the area. And this is a severe issue when it comes to balance and sense of orientation, because when you come up out, you're going to be coming out of a chamber that's under 2 or 3 times atmospheric pressure. Your eardrums are going to be near rupture point and then suddenly get exposed to regular air. They've got to have a mechanism for compensating for that, or you are going to have absolutely no balance coming out of these things. It's going to be like going on. A lot of people who go on their first spacewalk have no sense of balance. There's a reason for that. Lack of pressure, lack of pressurization, or sudden changes in pressure. So the troops in these things would have to be very highly specialized trained individuals with specialized equipment to compensate for pressure differences between the inside of the hull and when they jump out into the open air. On top of that, a miscalculation could result in you coming up and impacting into something that you don't want to impact into, like the front end of a Baneblade, or the foot of a Warhound Titan would be a very bad thing for this drill to try to come up under and then suddenly go, oh, whoops.
That being said, though, especially with the larger one, like the Hellbore, for example, because being the largest one, if that drilled underneath the foot of a Warhound Titan, wouldn't that also potentially knock the Warhound Titan off balance? Because basically it's got this massive cavern that's just formed under its foot.
It would knock the Titan off balance. I'm going to say this also about squad vehicles. Please, everyone, forgive me for the lack of pictures during this video, because there are not a lot of them. And my friends, actually, none of them actually own a Hellbore model. So there wasn't anything to really go off of as far as actually physically something I could hold and do measurements on with this thing. But I did have some specs that indicated it's about the size of an Imperator Titan foot, from about mid-shin down, which is massive, and it apparently transports an entire platoon of troops. To illustrate how many's in a platoon, that is 4 squads shoved into this thing, plus a tank. So a Hellbore comes up and deploys 4 squads of Imperial Guardsmen and a Leman Russ. Nice, impressive amount of firepower to come out of the ground. However, it is going to still have that problem of guidance, and particularly with ground penetrating radar and a drill this large, they're going to have to compensate for the metal of the Hellbore itself in order to prevent the ground penetrating radar from being interfered with by the vehicle it's attached to. But I'm assuming they can do that because they have this. And it is kind of scary to think about a squadron of Hellbores coming up behind your lines, because then you're looking back and you have a company of tanks and a battalion of troops who just decided to surface inside your fortress.
Now, imagine if the squads made one of these big enough to transport a Cyclops.
No. Bad. No. This is why we can't have nice things, okay? This is exactly why the squats are not allowed to have nice things. I say we, but seriously, this is why the squats are not allowed to have nice things.
A drill the size of a small town burst through the ground, disgorging an entire platoon of Cyclops transport tanks, all armed with their Hell Fury cannons, going surprise, boom. War's over.
And you wonder why Games Workshop refused to continue making squat models, because they realized how silly, obscenely overpowered they would have to be to go from Apocalypse scale to what we have in the normal 40k game, which, by the way, the normal 40k game is about a company-on-company level engagement. So... And
for the purpose of research, the only small squat vehicles we could actually find that were actually in 40k scale were squat bikes and squat trikes. That's it.
Yeah. Everything else is in Apocalypse size scale.
It's epic. That's literally it. The only time the squats themselves were actually a viable army in game was in Epic, because they had shit like this. But it gets even sillier. Now, the squats themselves don't have titans. They have trains.
Quote, the land train. Before we move on to the land train, quote, don't have titans. I want to make, quote, do not have titans. Sure they don't. Land train.
Yes, the land train. It's, as it sounds, it's a train. It has multiple carriages, each one carrying a different array of weaponry. So basically, imagine if you've got a Cyclops, a Colossus, a Leviathan, and one that's literally just a big cannon, all together, linked together, trundling across the battlefield, going choo-choo, motherfucker. The rape train has no brakes.
You know, that's a very good analogy for what this is. It has an excellent shaped frontal plow for both deflecting fire and for basically ramming vehicles and discarding them into the abyss of what's next to it. It turns out, according to the engineering specs, it also has what are called ripper blades mounted underneath it. So as it drives over the battlefield, anything it runs over gets shredded into little pieces by hundreds of thousands of man-sized chain swords. Or, you know, a couple dozen man-sized chain swords, but you get the idea. I don't... It has its own artillery batteries, it has its own battle cannons, it has... The Colossus chassis is normally a modified Colossus chassis is normally the frontal engine of the train. It also has a rear engine in case the front engine gets broken. They have several designs for the tracks, so the tracks, if the tracks get damaged or destroyed, can be replaced without anyone having to disembark from the vehicles. And on top of that, the road wheels are actually designed to run without tracks for periods of time in case the tracks actually do get shredded off.
And I also want to point out as well, in regards to their armor, these things were designed to endure earthquakes. They were also designed to endure meteor showers. Just to give you an idea how tough these things are. They are designed to have, you know, celestial bombardment and come out working.
The fluff on these things indicate that an entire Imperial battalion of Guard Leman Russes, firing their battle cannons until they ran out of ammunition, did all of Jack and shit. And I went, you've got to be kidding me. No, the fluff I have read on this indicates that they literally had an entire battalion of Leman Russes fire until they were out of ammunition, and all it did was scorch the paint. The armor on the front of on the front engine of this land train is 10 meters thick, on the sides is 10 meters thick, and on the rear is 8 meters thick. On top of the fact that it's a multi-system, multi-platform item, it is basically a mobile land fortress, which are vastly impractical for logistics purposes. However, remember those ripper blades underneath? They actually scoop up the stuff that they churn up, because there is apparently a land train car that it doesn't come with any main guns. It's exclusively a munitions depot. It makes its own ammo out of the dead corpses of its enemies.
How efficient.
How wonderful the squats came up with this idea. I wonder why we're not allowed to have them anymore. It also can tow a car designed so it's an internal hydroponics plant to grow its own food. The only thing it can't make itself is its own fuel, but they can stop and mine that themselves if they want, and then refine it on the train. So, logistically speaking, the problem becomes building this thing. I could literally see this taking as long as an Imperial starship to put together. So if you do break one of them or lose one of them, they're virtually irreplaceable. But you're talking about...
That being said, how are you going to take it out?
You're talking about, you know, the whole Blood Raven's first company having to drop on one of these land trains to kill it. That's what we're talking about in terms of scale of how much firepower is going to be required to bring one of these things down. And yeah, the problem I can see is it getting stuck, multiple system damage can inhibit it greatly. If one of the cars actually gets most of its mobility destroyed, then they're literally just dragging it along the ground as they move forward until they can repair it, which could cause some severe motor damage. The gun ports themselves are probably the most vulnerable point, because if you can land a shot inside of, say, the frontal thunder cannon while it's loaded and get the warhead to go off, I imagine that's going to disable the cannon and kill the crew of the cannon as the gun breech blows up in their face. But that much said, that's an incredibly good shot if you manage to land it. Lastly, I don't know if super heavy tanks like this could be practical even in the 40k universe. Because this goes from super heavy to ultra heavy, absolutely ridiculous scale and size, because Space Dwarf can.
The Scots have taken the whole concept of Titans, they're seeing giant mechanized bipedal walkers and said, fuck that, we're just going to make a big fucking tank.
And they made a big fucking tank.
They made a fucking tank train.
I honestly have no idea how to truly counter one of these things from a tactical or an engineering standpoint unless you intend to board it. The best counter I could see would be literally to get some assault marines to put some drop beacons onto the vehicle itself and drop the assault pods directly onto the vehicle. The impact from the assault pod should do a little bit of damage, and the marines getting out to storm it should do the rest.
The only other thing I can think of is get a whole bunch of orcs with shock attack guns and pray that the warp pool opens inside a bit with a whole bunch of crew, and pray all the snortlings kill the crew before they can react.
Yeah, a void missile would be a really good weapon. A void grenade would be a really good weapon. But
Stasis bomb would probably be a good weapon as well.
the problem with the stasis bomb is the blast radius is only going to disable one of the cars.
True, but if you disable the first one, like the actual train part of it, it's not going to be going anywhere.
If you disable the engine, it's not really going to be going anywhere, but it still has enough firepower to be a reasonable threat. And I found out the range of the missile is several hundred kilometers. It's a literal ICBM.
So essentially, you are not outrunning that. You can hide, but you mentioned that no, you can't hide. It will find you, and it will kill you. Those missiles are in fact Liam Neeson in disguise.
To some degree, yes, the missile is Liam Neeson in disguise, but literally it is a... The plasma warhead has an equivalent charge to Little Boy, according to the specs that my friends could manage to find on through various sites like Warhammer 40k Lexiconum, the Warhammer Epic books, Games Workshop's web, all the references they could possibly make. The plasma warheads on a land train are basically small atomic warheads. The squats, I don't think, understand the concept of you need a little tank. They either have bikes or ridiculous, insane vehicle.
They seem to be the opposite of the Dark Elder, who have fuck all. It's like it's either light high-speed vehicles or nothing.
And the squats are like, well, we have light high-speed vehicles, and then we have that. And everyone looks over at that and goes, what? What I can imagine happening is the land train is the loot point for all of the incoming, because they're supposed to be, quote, space Vikings, is the loot point for all the trikes to bring back all their stuff. And also you have massive squadrons of trikes just circling the land train, keeping it protected, so it can dish out all the heavy, I don't like anything type of firepower. I can also see that you could take any one of the Colossus hulls and soup up the engine, which I don't know how much of a bigger engine you could possibly mount in the thing, or soup up the reactor and make that the lead element of the train. which I think is basically the concept for the trains themselves, according to what I've read from the Epic books. Which means that a Cyclops on the front and back of a land train. I'm going to leave it at that. Just imagine putting a Cyclops on the front and back of a land train and then just going, job done. I could also imagine orcs looking at this and going, that's a lot of DACA. Can we put more DACA on it?
We must loot it and find out.
A looted Cyclops. That's the point.
A looted land train.
I'm sorry, but in this episode, I'm going to put this image in everyone's head. A looted land train rolls up to a Space Marine convoy. The Space Marine looks at it, pulls out his bolt pistol, and goes, I'm out. And just blows his own head off. He's just like, nope, I'm out.
I've now got this image of, like, this one orc mech boy hanging out, like, the window at the top of the train pile with a little train driver's hat going. It's like, choo-choo. All aboard the party train.
If the Squats and the Orcs ever had an alliance, everyone should just give up.
Well, funny enough, it was actually mentioned in the second edition fluff that Squats and Orcs, before they went to war with each other, they actually were on amicable terms. They actually traded before war broke out between them. Yeah. So at one point, Squats and the Orcs were technically, wouldn't say allies, but they were friendly towards each other.
Okay, that's a scary thought. I guess we now know how the Orcs managed to engineer their Gargants. Thanks, Squats. Thanks, you ruined the universe for everyone else.
And on that note, I think that leaves it for this episode of Blitzkrieg. So everyone on YouTube, please write in the comment section below what faction do you want us to actually cover next time. Who's actually next? We got Chaos, we got the Adeptus Mechanicus, we got the Inquisition slash Ecclesiarchy. We got the Tyranids.
The Tyranids and a special on Walkers are the remaining 5, I think.
Yes, I
Do we
believe
miss anybody
so.
else? If we miss somebody, let us know, and we will add them to the list of shenaniganry.
I know there's a couple more Imperial vehicles we're missing. That's like with the Imperial Guard Basilisk, for example, which is just basically a giant gun with tank treads.
The Imperial Guard Basilisk is just a mobile artillery piece to me, and I look at it and go, it's mobile arty. It's not an armored vehicle per se, the one you want on the front line.
No.
But I would really like to do the special on Walkers, and I know the Inquisition. There's a lot of people who are asking for the Grey Knight thing. That the text-of-speech Emperor went, what is that? It is ugly as hell.
What, the baby carrier?
Yes.
The Ward Knight, Matt Ward Knight.
Matt Ward Knight.
Because fuck you.
Although the Centurion is apparently adorable.
Because Matt Ward doesn't know what a dreadnought looks like, apparently.
Although apparently the Centurions are adorable.
Well, yeah, it's Centurion Bear.
But yeah.
They are adorable, yes. It's Centurion Bear.
I look forward to this every week, by the way, guys. And I will be... I'm doing Blood of Vengeance for you tomorrow, actually, aren't I?
Vengeance of the Blood Angels, you mean?
Yes, that one.
That one, yes, you are. So you've got that to look forward to as well. Nice, because funny enough, there's actually been some more news in regards to the new Space Hulk game. Granted, it's only news if you can actually understand German, but it's been small. Because that's the only country who's actually got the actual news. Why the Germans, I don't know. That's not knocking the Germans, so don't ask. I watched Damnators, and that was actually a pretty damn good fan film. Had to turn the subtitles on mine, but still, it was a good film.
But in the meantime...
Yes, this has been Remnants from 40k Theories.
And this has been Fiaura. I hope to see you all in the next video, and if you think I screwed up somewhere, let us know in the comments. I try my best, guys.
I know you do.
I try my best, but I do admit that this week I went 2 days without a computer because I was upgrading the hardware, and I literally spent 2 days tearing my hair out because I couldn't do anything. So, I will see you all in the next video, and I hope to, Remles keeps having me around because he's an awesome human being.
You damn right.